Hey guys, tonight we step back in time, way back to around 50,000 BCE when the first clear traces of your DNA begin to echo in the world. Imagine the land, savanna grasses, stretching across what is now East Africa, red soil warming under a sun that blazes and then dips to a sky scattered with stars so sharp they could cut. You're standing barefoot, dust clinging to your ankles, the smell of damp reeds by a nearby river mixing with smoke from a small fire. A band of people, barely a few dozen, huddled together. They don't know it, but they are your people. The story of every breath you've ever taken starts with them. And if you're thinking you'd like to test your survival skills here, well, good luck. Between predators with teeth the size of your forearm and a climate that flips between famine and flood, you probably won't survive this night. Before we dive, don't forget, if you're fascinated by the mystery of human DNA and our deep origins, gently tap that subscribe button and like this video. It helps keep this channel alive for you. And since this story stretches across the whole world, post your location and local time in the comments. Are you lying in bed in New York at midnight, or listening at dawn in London? Let's see how far the echoes of 50,000 BCE reach tonight. Settle in, close your eyes if you like, and let's walk into the oldest chapters of you. You find yourself in Africa, in a world both familiar and alien. Familiar because the air still carries the scent of earth and rain. Alien because it is a raw, wilder planet, one not yet bent into the shape of human ambition. Your tribe numbers fewer than you can fit into a small bus, 40, maybe 50. Every face is familiar, every gesture known, because this is survival by intimacy. There are no strangers, only kin. The fire crackles low, a thin line of smoke smudging against the star-heavy sky. The night buzzes with insects, but beneath that hum you hear deeper sounds, the cough of a distant lion, the splash of a crocodile rolling in the shallows. This is where your DNA story begins, under your skin right now. Whether you're listening from Chicago, or Karachi or Cape Town, are the molecules first crafted in bodies like these. It is humbling to think that almost all modern humans trace their line back to a population in Africa that might have been as small as a few thousand. A genetic bottleneck, scientists call it, though here in the firelight, it's simply life. A small cluster of families huddled against extinction. They do not know they are ancestors. They know only the immediacy of hunger, of keeping the children alive, of watching the shadows for eyes that glow. The people around you are anatomically modern humans, Homo sapiens, but that phrase is a luxury of later taxonomies. To them, they are simply people, the only people they know. Their foreheads rise higher than their Neanderthal cousins up north. Their faces flatter, their jaws lighter. If you looked into their eyes, you would recognize them, not as a distant apekin, but as someone startlingly like yourself. Their hands move as yours do, their laughter echoes in a rhythm you would catch, and if they sang by the fire you might find the melody oddly familiar. And the DNA, oh the DNA hums like a hidden drumline beneath all this. Every strand inside them, curled like a sleeping snake in the nucleus of each cell, is carrying forward mutations, copying errors, little scribbles that will one day help scientists reconstruct the journey. Mitochondrial DNA, passed down through mothers, is already stitching a continuous line from one woman to another, all the way to you. Picture her, a woman squatting near the fire, her child pressed to her breast, eyes scanning the night. She doesn't know she's Mitochondrial Eve, but she is, not in the sense of being the only woman alive, but in the sense of being the one whose maternal line will echo unbroken. Around this camp, tasks unfold in rhythms as old as humanity itself. One group sharpens points on spears, chipping obsidian with a precision that would impress a modern craftsperson. Another tends a skin pouch of water, precious as any gold bar. The children tug at each other, wrestling in the dust, shrieking with laughter that startles a nearby bird. The smell of roasted tubers wafts up, earthy and sweet, and you realize dinner here would sit comfortably on any hipster restaurant menu. Wild roots, roasted meat, handfuls of berries, no ultra-processed sugar, no plastic wrap, just calories chased, caught and cherished. The men and women are not separated into rigid categories. Everyone hunts if they can, gathers if they must, cares for children when it's needed. This fluidity is survival, and woven into their bodies, their muscles, their marrow, are genetic adaptations you still carry. Strong immune systems fine-tuned against parasites, skin pigmented to guard against the African sun, metabolisms honed to store fat in lean times. If you've ever cursed your body for hoarding calories, blame them. They didn't know supermarkets were coming. Step outside the circle of firelight and the night presses in. The moon casts silver against the grasses, and the world is alive with dangers. Hyenas cackle, a sound so much like laughter it's unnerving, and in the brush, antelope shift nervously. Out there, you're reminded how fragile this species is. Homo sapiens is new, untested. Other hominins exist in the world at this moment. Neanderthals, Denisovans, perhaps even lingering Homo erectus. Your kind is not guaranteed to win. If you could place a bet right now on which species would dominate the planet 150,000 years later, you might hedge your money elsewhere. But here's the thing, your DNA is already showing its cards. Inside the brains of these people is a subtle rewiring, a flexibility of thought that will allow them to innovate tools faster, to adapt to environments more quickly, to imagine futures beyond the horizon. DNA is not destiny, but it is potential, and Homo sapiens carries a genetic toolkit with astonishing versatility. Genes tied to language, to symbolic thought, to memory, they are here, humming quietly, like seeds waiting for spring. As dawn rises, the tribe begins to move. They travel lightly, carrying only what they need. Children are slung on hips, spears gripped loosely but ready, and the fire is knocked out with a pat of sand. They follow river valleys, pathways carved by animals, routes remembered by elders. DNA moves with them, like a secret cargo. With every birth, every death, the code shifts slightly, new mutations sparking like flares. Most of these mutations are meaningless, but some will prove crucial. One will one day help people digest milk, another resist malaria, another lighten or darken skin depending on latitude. When you picture yourself in this time, you are not separate, you are carried inside them, as surely as they are carried inside you. That scar on your knee, that allergy to pollen, even your ability to metabolize caffeine, it all has roots in the long stumbling chain of DNA from this moment. To sit here by their fire is to sit at your own beginning. And yet, the mystery remains. Why here? Why now? Why did Homo sapiens emerge in Africa at this time, with this specific genetic blueprint? Fossil evidence gives fragments of an answer: skulls in Omo Kibish, bones in Herto, stone tools scattered across Ethiopia. DNA fills in the invisible lines, drawing ancestry across space and time, but the full story is still murky. It is like looking at a painting through frosted glass. The outlines are clear, the details blurred. At night, as the tribe settles, you catch yourself wondering how much of what you are, your preferences, your anxieties, your strange quirks, was already whispered into existence here. Was the first person who feared the dark seated near this fire? Was the first who dreamed of something beyond survival already looking at the stars overhead, seeing more than light? These are the echoes of DNA, not as a scientific string of letters but as lived experience, passed down cell by cell, dream by dream. The rhythm of life here is both precarious and enduring. Weeks blur into seasons, seasons into years, and through it all DNA records the changes. There are droughts that press ribs tight against skin, famines that leave graves too small, and floods that sweep away whole camps. Each crisis is another genetic filter, trimming the tree, ensuring only certain branches grow. When the population dips, when only a few thousand remain, the DNA bottleneck sharpens. What survives will shape all of humanity. And here you are, trailing alongside them, your modern mind inside an ancient body. You can smell the sweat and wood smoke, hear the crack of a branch underfoot, feel the rasp of stone against your palm. You are part of their world, and they are inside yours. The mystery of DNA is not an abstract code, it is continuity, a line that runs unbroken from 50,000 BCE to the breath you take right now. The sun beats down on the Rift Valley, painting everything in shades of ochre and gold. You walk across the cracked soil, each step raising small puffs of dust that settle on your skin, sticking in a thin, gritty film. The year, if you could call it that, though nobody here marks calendars, is somewhere around 150,000 BCE. This is the cradle of Homo sapiens, the world where bones and DNA intertwine to tell the opening chapters of your own story. Tonight you won't just hear about it, you will live inside it, tracing the evidence as though it were braided into your own veins. Around you, people cluster near a slow-moving river. The smell of damp reeds rises, mingled with the sharp metallic tang of fresh-cut stone. That sound, tap tap, chip, carries as men and women alike strike flakes off obsidian cores, producing blades sharper than surgical steel. You wince when one slices a thumb, though the worker barely notices, sucking at the wound and returning to the rhythm. These fragments will be hafted onto wooden shafts, creating spears and knives, fossilized remains of such tools, dug up tens of thousands of years later, would make archaeologists blink in recognition. They are the fingerprints of a people you are only beginning to recognize as your own. The fossil record here is sparse, cruelly so: a handful of skulls, a scattering of bones, a few teeth lodged in sediment. These are the puzzle pieces scientists fit together, guided now by genetic evidence. Homo Kibish, in Ethiopia, gave up the oldest known Homo sapiens remains, a skull with its high forehead and rounded brain case, not so different from yours. At Herto, another set of remains revealed subtle shifts: cheekbones tucked in, jaws less protruding, the beginnings of that familiar face you see in the mirror. Each bone is like a letter, but DNA provides the grammar, showing not only what they look like but how they connected across generations. You squat beside a child, her hair tight curls catching the light. She presses a stick into the mud, drawing lines that swirl and loop. You can't help but smile. Some things don't change. But inside her cells lies the more astonishing scribble: mitochondrial DNA, inherited from her mother and her mother's mother, back through an unbroken chain. This thread, coiled and guarded inside tiny organelles, will one day allow scientists to trace nearly all modern humans to a single maternal ancestor, not the only woman alive at her time, but the one whose line endures in every breath you take. It's strange to sit beside her, to hear her laugh at some private joke, and know that in a sense you share her laughter in your own body. Nearby, a man sharpens a long blade, his movements precise, almost hypnotic. His Y chromosome will one day merge with maternal lines, creating the fusion of ancestries that defines Homo sapiens. He doesn't know it, of course. He's mostly concerned about whether tonight's hunt will yield enough meat to quiet the growling stomachs around the fire. But his genetic legacy, stitched through generations of fathers, is another anchor point in your story. Scientists call him Y chromosome Adam, not because he was the first man but because his male line managed to survive where others ended. His life, simple as it seems, napping stone, carrying water, laughing with companions, is part of your life too. The fossils and bones whisper only faintly, but DNA shouts across time. When scientists extract fragments from ancient remains, they uncover not just the sequence of nucleotides, but the patterns of migration and survival. It's as if every cell carried a diary, written in chemical ink, waiting to be read. And here you are, walking among the diary's authors, watching as they live their lives, unaware that one day, their blood and bones will be scrutinized, under microscopes, in fluorescent labs. You can almost imagine them laughing at the absurdity of it. You mean people will spend decades studying our spit? Yes indeed, and you'll be grateful they do. The fire burns low as evening comes, the smoke carrying upward into a sky that deepens into violet. Fossils alone could never tell you what this world smelled like or sounded like: the rasp of crickets, the sudden snort of a startled antelope, the murmur of voices settling into story. But paired with DNA, the bones become animated again, fitted into a lineage that stretches outward like the stars overhead. Each bone in Homo or Herto whispers, "We were here, and you are here, because of us." Still, it's not all romance. Life here is hard, brutal even. Infant mortality is high, predators stalk the edges, droughts wither crops, and disease strikes without warning. Each hardship trims the genetic tree, pruning branches, but somehow, through it all, the population holds on. Each burial, shallow graves marked with stones, adds a page to the fossil record. Each surviving child adds a thread to the DNA tapestry. That dual record, fossil and genetic, becomes the foundation for everything to come. Think of it: a skull weathered by time, buried in river silt for thousands of years, carries within it the same story you can trace in your cheekbones, your blood type, even your risk for certain diseases. The fossils don't lie. They are the anchor points that prove this isn't myth or allegory. You really do stand on bones that stretch back 150,000 years, and the DNA coils inside those bones are the unbroken link. As night deepens, you lean back and look at the fire-lit faces. They seem both distant and uncannily familiar. You recognize the curve of a smile, the squint of an eye, the way one man gestures with his hands as though punctuation hangs in the air. Fossils won't capture this, but DNA does, in its own quiet way. It records not only structure but possibility, the genes that shape temperament, the ones that influence memory, even the ones tied to language. You see the seeds here in the murmur of voices and the crackle of laughter. Tomorrow they will move again, leaving behind ash and footprints. Millennia later, those prints may be fossilized, discovered by some curious digger, measured and catalogued, But the real treasure is already moving with them, invisible, the genetic record, humming in every cell, carrying the story forward. And as you walk with them tonight, you realize the mystery isn't only how DNA explains the past, the mystery is how it still lives in you, quietly, every time your heart beats, every time your breath comes and goes. This is the beginning of your fossil record, your DNA record, your shared inheritance. You are not looking back at strangers, you are looking into a mirror that spans 50,000 years, and that reflection is both haunting and comforting. The morning air clings heavy with mist, curling low over the valley where acacia trees punctuate the horizon like crooked umbrellas. Your bare feet sink into soil damp from last night's rain, and in the distance, the cries of ibises scatter across the sky. It's 50,000 BCE, and you're walking alongside a small group of Homo sapiens, who are unknowingly carrying the threads of humanity's most profound genetic story. They don't call it that, of course. There's no word for ancestry, no notion of DNA. What they carry is simple survival, and yet within that survival lies the code that will ripple into every human being alive today. The group halts near the riverbank. The water glints with the morning sun, and reeds sway in a lazy rhythm. You watch as a woman crouches, scooping water into a skin pouch. She glances over her shoulder at the child tugging her arm. That child, like every other here, is a living experiment in genetics. Inside her is mitochondrial DNA passed down unbroken from her mother, and from her grandmother, and from countless women before. Scientists many millennia later will call this line Mitochondrial Eve, the maternal ancestor whose genetic trace appears in every modern human. She was not the only woman of her time, but she is the one whose line refused to flicker out. You notice how the tribe treats her without ceremony. She is not a queen, not divine, just another woman, working to keep children fed and bodies warm, and yet in a sense, she is carrying the future of all humanity in her womb, in her eggs, in the quiet swirl of organelles within her cells. The idea is staggering. If you could tell her that every living human one day would carry a piece of her, she might laugh or look at you suspiciously and hand you a spear. Nearby, a man throws a spear at a reed target, practicing for the hunt. His lineage, stitched through the Y chromosome, will also echo forward. Somewhere in this mix of men lives the one scientists dub Y chromosome Adam. Like Eve, he isn't the only man alive, nor is he necessarily her mate, but his male line persists, through unbroken father-to-son inheritance. It's odd to think of him cracking a joke or scratching his beard, while unknowingly becoming one of the ultimate genetic anchors of humanity. As the sun climbs higher, you trail the group. As they prepare to move camp, they pack lightly, hides for warmth, sharpened obsidian blades, dried meat tucked into skin pouches. A few clay-colored beads dangle from a woman's neck, decoration, perhaps, or maybe an early symbol of social bond. The children tug at them, giggling, the same way kids today might pull at their mother's jewelry in a supermarket aisle. Some behaviors seem hardwired, stitched into us as tightly as any nucleotide. The group's DNA carries markers of resilience. Skin darkened by melanin shields them from ultraviolet radiation, a crucial adaptation under the African sun. Their immune systems have been sharpened by endless battles with parasites, viruses, and bacteria. Mutations come and go, some do nothing, others cripple, and a few grant tiny advantages that echo forward. These tiny advantages are like pebbles thrown into a river. Most sink unnoticed, but some create ripples that alter the flow. One day, far down the line, mutations will allow certain populations to digest milk, to resist malaria, to thrive in thin mountain air. But here in 50,000 BCE, nobody is thinking about dairy products or malaria resistance. They're thinking about surviving lions and making sure the fire doesn't go out in the night. The fire, always the fire. At dusk, sparks rise into the cooling air, the smell of smoke clinging to hair and skin. Fire is more than warmth, it is protection, light, and a social glue. Around it, people murmur stories, though not in any language you'd recognize. Words are simple, gestures fill the gaps, but the seeds of complex speech are here, buried in DNA. A gene called FUX2, already in their bodies, shapes their ability to form sounds and link them into meaning. Language as you know it will take millennia to flourish, but the blueprint is already humming quietly inside their cells. You listen as they chatter, the rhythm rising and falling. It's not poetry, not yet, but it is communication, flexible and adaptable. That adaptability, as much as any spear, is what will allow Homo sapiens to spread beyond Africa. You glance at the children, their faces illuminated by firelight, and wonder if they realize how lucky they are. Probably not. They're too busy poking each other with sticks and laughing when someone topples into the dirt. Beyond the fire's glow, the darkness presses in. A hyena whoops in the distance, and everyone stiffens. Spears are pulled closer, children tucked under arms. Danger sharpens the air. You realize just how fragile this tribe is. A single raid by predators, a disease sweeping through camp, a drought that withers the plants, and the entire genetic future of humanity could vanish. It nearly did, in fact. Scientists studying DNA have found evidence of population bottlenecks, moments when Homo sapiens may have dwindled to just a few thousand individuals. The fact you're even listening to this now is proof they survived those knife edges of extinction. It's humbling, almost absurd. You owe your existence to the stubborn persistence of people you would mistake for neighbors if they walked into a supermarket, albeit barefoot and carrying spears. The tribe rises at dawn and begins to move again. Children complain, dragging their feet, while adults keep scanning the horizon for food and danger. You walk with them, hearing the crunch of soil underfoot, the buzz of flies, the distant crash of an animal moving through brush. Every step pushes their DNA further across the map, mutations carried like invisible passengers. They don't know they are spreading humanity, they just know they need to find water, food and safety. Yet in doing so, they lay the groundwork for migration routes that will stretch eventually across Asia, Europe, and into the Americas.
You pause as they stop at a cliffside where handprints mark the stone.
Red ochre pigment stains the wall, smeared into crude shapes. It's not fine art, not yet, but it is something more than utility. A child's hand pressed against stone says, "I was here." It is memory made physical, and in a way it is a cousin to DNA, another form of recording presence, of leaving a mark for the future. Both the pigment and the genes say the same thing: humanity persists. At night, as you lie near the fading fire, you think about how this story is both vast and intimate. Vast because DNA connects billions of people across time and space. Intimate because it's carried in your own cells, in the beating of your own heart. You are not separate from them. You are them, extended through thousands of generations. Every time you glance at your reflection, you are looking at a face shaped by those who gathered here, by those who survived predators, droughts, famines, and bottlenecks. And tomorrow, they will move again. Another river, another patch of forest, another night where DNA hums invisibly beneath the skin, carrying forward its secrets, waiting for the moment, thousands of centuries later, when someone would finally raid it. The night sky above you stretches in velvet darkness, jeweled with stars that look so close you could pluck them like fruit. The air smells of ash from the dying fire, mixed with the earthy sweetness of crushed grass beneath your body. Around you, the camp settles into silence, but your mind drifts forward past the fire, past the reeds, past the acacia silhouettes, to the sprawling routes of migration that will one day carry these people far from Africa. You're still in 50,000 BCE, but here, DNA is already rehearsing the script for one of the boldest journeys in history, the out-of-Africa migration. You stir as the camp wakes with the first hints of dawn. The horizon glows with the faintest orange smear, and the air is cool enough to sting your lungs. A man with broad shoulders kicks dust over the embers of the fire, his foot leaving a shallow impression in the earth. If you could fast forward thousands of years, you might find such footprints fossilized, preserved, as stubborn reminders of human movement. But you don't need fossils to know the truth. The DNA inside these people already tells the tale of movement, of splitting, of wandering. It is the roadmap of the future. The elders of the group glance at the river. Water glitters faintly, shrinking back from its banks after weeks of dryness. There's a decision to be made: stay, risking hunger and thirst, or move toward greener lands. The instinct to migrate isn't lofty or romantic. It is survival, pure and blunt. Yet in leaving, they become architects of humanity's great dispersal. You walk with them as they begin the slow march, spears balanced on shoulders, hides slung across backs, children carried against hips. The path snakes across the valley, weaving through thornbush and grass, taller than your head. Insects swarm in a maddening buzz, and sweat clings to your brow. The group trudges steadily, and you realize this is not a single journey, but the rhythm of life itself. Migration is not an event, it is the normal pulse of a species chasing water, food and safety. Each step lays down a breadcrumb in DNA. Mutations accumulate, small errors in replication that will one day allow scientists to chart exactly where and when these people wandered. You imagine the first bold crossing beyond Africa. Some will follow the Nile north, pushing through Egypt and into the Levant. Others will hug the coastlines, harvesting shellfish as they move eastward toward Arabia, India, and eventually Southeast Asia. Still others will press northward into harsh climates, chasing herds of antelope or urochs. At this moment, of course, none of that is clear. All they know is hunger and curiosity, a blend strong enough to propel them over mountains, deserts and oceans. At night, as they huddle under hides, you think of the scale of it. These are not mass migrations, not armies marching in step. They are small groups, handfuls of families peeling away, never to return. Over centuries, those handfuls spread thinly across continents. Their DNA drifts with them, carrying markers like flags planted invisibly in new soils. Scientists much later will marvel at the way genes show these paths, how a particular mutation appears in one region, and then like a breadcrumb trail, shows up again thousands of miles away. You pause by a shoreline, waves slap against rocks, salty spray sticking to your lips. A few tribe members pry shellfish from the rocks, cracking them open with practiced ease. The ocean is both barrier and highway. Its waters are treacherous, but its coastlines provide food that sustains long journeys. Genetic studies today suggest coastal routes may have been critical to dispersal, with small groups creeping along the edges of continents like shadows. The rhythm of waves becomes the rhythm of migration. The dangers are constant. A lion's roar shatters the night, a snake coils underfoot, a drought stretches weeks into months, cracking soil, withering plants and leaving bones littered in the dust. Each catastrophe trims the genetic tree, reducing populations to frighteningly small numbers. Scientists call this a bottleneck, and the evidence is still in your DNA today. At one point, perhaps only a few thousand humans remained on the planet. Picture that, the survival of every person you know hanging by the thread of a single small community. It almost didn't happen. You are here because they were stubborn, resourceful, and maybe just a little lucky. Luck comes in many forms. You watch as a group stumbles across a herd of gazelle, and spears fly in coordinated arcs. One animal falls, its blood pooling dark against the soil. The tribe cheers softly, relief washing through them. Tonight, bellies will be full, and energy will be stored for another stretch of walking. Food is luck, water is luck, even the absence of predators is luck. Migration is never guaranteed. It is a gamble played with lives, but every gamble feeds the genetic river, pushing humanity farther outward. In your modern mind, you picture maps, bright arrows sweeping out of Africa, branching into Europe, Asia, Australia, and eventually the Americas. But here, in 50,000 BCE, there are no maps. There is only instinct, guided by the wisdom of elders and the scent of rain in the distance. And yet the DNA carried in their blood will later allow scientists to recreate the routes almost exactly. It's as if each person carried a GPS tracker inside their cells, quietly recording longitude and latitude in nucleotides. As you trudge alongside them, the heat of the day presses down like a weight. Sweat trickles down your back, and dust sticks to your tongue. A boy beside you stumbles, his small body exhausted. His mother hoists him onto her hip, her muscles trembling with effort. You can almost hear the DNA inside them whispering, "Move forward, survive, carry us onward." The drive is relentless, coded into every cell. By dusk, they find another water source, a shallow pool ringed with reeds. Frogs croak loudly, and the tribe splashes into the shallows with visible relief. For tonight, they have what they need, but tomorrow they will rise again, step forward again, carrying the invisible legacy of all future humans. Migration is not glamorous. It is blistered feet, empty stomachs, tense nights filled with animal cries, but in enduring it, Homo sapiens spread across the globe. The DNA proves it. Every mutation along the way is a breadcrumb marking the journey. And tonight, lying beside them under the cold, glittering stars, you realize you are not listening to strangers' footsteps. You are hearing your own. The night is still when you wake, broken only by the low grumble of the wind sliding over the savannah. A few embers glow faintly where the fire once roared, sending thin threads of smoke into the dark. Around you figures stir, people stretching sore limbs, adjusting hides, rubbing the sleep from their eyes. Today will not be an ordinary day, though of course they don't know it yet. For in their movements, in their glances at one another, and in the invisible currents running through their blood, a new chapter of human history is being written, the story of interbreeding with Neanderthals. You rise with them, feeling the chill before dawn. The air smells of dust and smoke, tinged with the faint tang of meat roasted last night. Children huddle against their mothers, yawning wide-mouthed, their hair wild. Spears are gathered, skins tied into bundles, and once again the group begins to move. But as they push northward beyond the familiar boundaries of Africa, they are stepping into lands already occupied. They are not alone out here. Ahead, in the caves and forests of Eurasia, Neanderthals wait. Imagine the first encounter. A river valley in what is now the Middle East, perhaps 70,000 or 60,000 years ago. Dense trees rustle heavy with leaves, and the call of strange birds echoes overhead. Your people creep cautiously through, scanning for game, unaware that they are being watched by eyes very much like their own. In a clearing, the groups meet, Homo sapiens and Homo neanderthalensis. The Neanderthals are shorter, stockier, their limbs powerful, their brows heavy with ridges, but their eyes, those you recognize immediately, intelligent, alert, curious. It is a mirror meeting a mirror, and both sides realize they are not as unique as they thought. The first moments must have been tense. Spears raised, muscles taut, children pulled behind protective arms. Here are strangers who look so similar yet carry an aura of otherness, and yet curiosity has a way of seeping through fear. Perhaps a gesture is made, a lowering of a weapon, an offering of food. Perhaps laughter cracks the tension, reminding both groups that humor is one of humanity's oldest bridges. Slowly, barriers crumble, and when barriers crumble, something inevitable happens. Bloodlines mingle. It is hard to picture in detail. Was it romance, friendship, alliance, or was it sometimes less gentle, marked by conflict and coercion? The truth is likely both. What matters for your story, though, is the DNA exchanged hands, woven into the tapestry of humanity. Today, scientists can find Neanderthal markers in nearly every non-African population on Earth. About 1 to 2% of your genome carries their imprint. That means, whether you're sitting in London, Lahore, or Los Angeles, part of you is Neanderthal. You pause to consider what that really means. Neanderthals were not mindless brutes. Despite the old stereotypes, they cared for their sick, buried their dead, and crafted tools with skill. Some even painted cave walls with ochre, leaving behind handprints that feel eerily personal. When you press your palm against stone today, you echo the same instinct. So when Homo sapiens and Neanderthals mixed, it wasn't simply a genetic exchange, it was a merging of stories, of memories, of skills. You walk through a cave with them, torchlight flickering against the walls. Shadows leap across engravings, lines, circles, perhaps the earliest attempts at symbols. Neanderthals stand beside sapiens here, both groups illuminated by the same flames. DNA flows invisibly between them. A child born of such a union cries out, tiny lungs filling the cave with sound. That cry is humanity's future, a blending that will persist for tens of thousands of years. The advantages of such mixing were subtle but profound. Genes linked to immunity strengthened Homo sapiens against pathogens they had never faced before. Others may have influenced skin tone, hair texture, even metabolism. That 1 to 2% of Neanderthal DNA inside you is not dead weight, it is survival, hard-earned, in the forests and tundras of ancient Eurasia. Next time you grumble about catching a cold, remember that part of your ability to fight it comes from cousins you never met. But not everything gained was pleasant. Some Neanderthal genes are associated with modern ailments, diabetes, depression, nicotine addiction. Imagine inheriting tendencies toward restless sleep or moody winters from a stocky ancestor huddled in an Ice Age cave. It's oddly comforting, though, to think your midnight gloom might have been shared by someone gnawing on a mammoth bone 60,000 years ago. Misery, it seems, also has a lineage. The world of interbreeding was messy. Not every meeting ended in cooperation. Spears clashed, blood spilled, and some groups likely vanished in violence. But overall, the DNA tells a story not of conquest but of integration. If Homo sapiens had wiped out Neanderthals instantly, their genes wouldn't be inside you. Instead, the legacy is written in the code of your cells, proof that humanity's rise was never a story of pure replacement, but of blending. Picture it, 2 children, 1 sapiens, 1 Neanderthal, chasing each other through a meadow dotted with wild flowers. Their laughter carries over the grass, indistinguishable. When they tumble to the ground in a heap, rolling in the dust, their mothers smile despite themselves. The children don't care about species distinctions, they care about the game, the chase, the moment. And from moments like this, lines blur, and families merge. Night falls again, the fire crackles, smoke curling upward as voices murmur in the dark. You lie there staring at the stars, thinking of how strange it is that part of you is Neanderthal. In your genome are whispers of stocky hunters crouching in caves, of hands stained with ochre, of lives lived in cold forests. They did not vanish entirely, they live on, inside you, inside billions. Every heartbeat carries their rhythm. As dawn breaks, the sapiens continue their journey. They carry obsidian blades, bundles of food, and children on their hips, but they also carry something unseen, fragments of Neanderthal DNA woven into their very being, and in that weaving, the story of humanity becomes richer, more complicated, more beautiful. You walk with them, dust clinging to your feet, realizing once again that the mystery of DNA is not an abstract puzzle, it is a lived reality, carved into bone, echoed in faces, and humming quietly inside every cell of your body. The Neanderthals are gone, yes, but their story never truly ended. It continues in you. The wind cuts colder here, sharper than the humid breezes you knew back in the valleys of Africa. The air smells different too, pine resin and damp soil instead of the sun-baked grasses of the savannah. You are far to the east now, moving with small bands of Homo sapiens who have followed coastlines, skirted rivers, and wandered over mountains. It is somewhere between 60,000 and 50,000 years ago, though nobody here is keeping track. What matters is survival, and what they don't realize is that survival here will mean yet another fusion of bloodlines, this time with a mysterious cousin whose traces remain in you today, the Denisovans. The setting is strange and new. Towering forests crowd the horizon, trunks so wide that 5 people together couldn't wrap their arms around them. Mist hangs low, curling between branches, and the cries of animals echo in ways that make the hair on your arms rise. The ground beneath your feet is soft, spongy with moss. It smells of decay and growth at once, a reminder that life and death feed each other endlessly here. You glance around at the sapiens who travel with you, lean, cautious, scanning every sound. They're out of their element, and yet their DNA, restless as ever, has brought them here. Somewhere beyond this forest, a cave yawns open in the Altai Mountains. Millennia later, archaeologists will find tiny fragments there, a child's tooth, a sliver of finger bone, barely anything at all. But inside those fragments lies an entire revelation, the genome of the Denisovans, another branch of humanity long gone, yet never fully erased. Even as you walk now, you are sharing the world with them, though you may not know it until you meet. Imagine the first encounter. The sapiens, thinner and more wiry, stumble across a small group of broad-shouldered people with flatter noses, strong jaws, and a quiet confidence born of deep familiarity with this harsh land. They don't look entirely like Neanderthals, but not quite like sapiens either. Their voices are rougher perhaps, their languages unfamiliar, but their eyes are unmistakably human, and once again, as it happened with Neanderthals, curiosity dissolves fear, spears are lowered, fires are shared. Over time bonds are formed, and when bonds are formed, bloodlines entwine. You can almost hear the whisper of DNA exchanging between them, silent as smoke rising. Children are born who carry both sapiens and Denisovan heritage. Those children's children will one day spread across Asia, into Oceania, into the Pacific. Thousands of years later, if you test the genome of a person from Papua New Guinea or Tibet, you will still find Denisovan signatures lingering in the code. Around 406% of their DNA comes from these ancient unions. It is a living echo of nights like this, when 2 fires once burned side by side. Denisovan DNA did not vanish quietly. Some of its gifts are still vital today. In Tibet, for instance, a gene inherited from Denisovans allows people to breathe efficiently at high altitudes, thriving where oxygen is scarce. Without that gift, life on the roof of the world might have been impossible. Other fragments strengthened immune responses, guarding bodies against local diseases. In a sense, Denisovans are still protecting humanity, their legacy pulsing invisibly in bloodstreams whenever someone takes a deep breath on a mountain pass. But not every inheritance was beneficial. Some genes may contribute to vulnerabilities, allergies, metabolic quirks, even certain chronic illnesses. Denisovans, like all of us, were imperfect. Their DNA was a mixed bag, some tools, some burdens. You carry both, whether you know it or not. The fire tonight is bright against the looming dark. You sit among them, sapiens and Denisovans together, watching sparks scatter into the sky. Laughter rumbles, deeper than the Neanderthal chuckles you once heard, but just as warm. Someone passes roasted meat, smoky and rich. You chew slowly, marveling at the thought that such a simple meal is sealing the fate of entire populations. This is not a council of leaders planning the future, it is just people sharing food, stories, warmth, and yet in that sharing, humanity's genetic diversity expands. The cave walls bear witness. Hands press ochre pigment into stone, leaving ghostly prints. You recognize the impulse immediately. It is the same as the handprints you saw in Africa, the same as the carvings you saw in Neanderthal caves. I was here, they declare. It is a universal human instinct, whether sapiens, Neanderthal, or Denisovan, to mark existence, to be remembered, and thanks to DNA, they are remembered, even when bones and pigment fade. Morning brings challenges. The forest is damp, the air biting cold. Hunting is difficult here. The animals are massive, bears with shoulders higher than your head, tigers with teeth that flash like ivory daggers. Spears alone seem pitiful against such threats. Yet Denisovans know this land. They have lived here for millennia, adapting in ways sapiens cannot yet fathom. Their knowledge blends with sapiens' adaptability, and together survival seems just a little more possible. You watch as a Denisovan shows a sapiens how to track a bear through claw marks on a tree. In return, the sapiens demonstrates how to fashion a more efficient spearhead. It is not only genes being exchanged here, it is skills, wisdom, entire lifeways, and those intangible inheritances will ripple just as far as the biological ones. But life remains precarious. Population sizes are small, frighteningly so. A single harsh winter could wipe out an entire band. Disease could sweep through and erase a lineage overnight. The odds of survival are low, yet against those odds, they persist, and their persistence means you exist. You carry the story of this fragile cooperation in every cell. At night, the stars blaze with icy brilliance. You lie beside the fire, hearing the low hum of voices in the dark. Somewhere, a child stirs in sleep, murmuring softly. That child may never know she is carrying a genetic code that will travel across continents, across oceans, across tens of thousands of years. She may never know her descendants will climb Himalayan peaks and breathe easily where others gasp, but you know, you feel it as surely as the heat from the fire on your skin. The Denisovans will vanish, eventually, their caves will fall silent, their fires will die, but their story is not erased. It is hidden in the code you carry, in the oxygen flowing through the blood of Tibetans, in the immune systems of people scattered across Asia and Oceania. They are not gone, they are here, in you, in us. As dawn breaks, the bands begin to part ways. Some sapiens continue eastward, hugging coastlines toward lands they cannot yet imagine. Denisovans remain in their mountains, their forests, their caves, but the bond forged between them lingers in every heartbeat of their descendants. You walk with the sapiens, glancing back once at the smoky cave mouth. You don't know it yet, but part of you will always remain there in the shadows, in the whispers, in the blood of a people who never fully disappeared. The air feels thin tonight, stretched taut, like a drumskin. The fire crackles weakly against the biting wind, its smoke smudging across the dark sky. You sit with the band of sapiens, their backs hunched against the cold, hides pulled tight around shoulders. This is no gentle savanna, this is Eurasia, in the grip of ice age shifts, and the harshness is etched into every breath. Yet as the flames sputter, you sense something deeper at work, a hidden thread that runs beneath the surface of survival. These people are carrying not only spears and skins, but also a fragile, dwindling population, the genetic bottleneck that almost silenced humanity forever. You close your eyes and imagine the scale, not billions of humans, not millions, perhaps only a few thousand across the entire globe. Entire continents lie empty, forests untraveled, rivers unwaded. The whole species could fit inside a single sports stadium. Every cough, every wound, every famine threatens the very continuity of humanity. It is unsettling, this razor's edge. You think about your own modern world, where crowds overflow into subways and stadiums, and it is almost impossible to picture a time when humanity's future hung on so few shoulders, and yet the DNA inside you today carries scars of that near extinction. The evidence whispers in genetic sequences. When scientists map variation across human populations, they find narrow bands, reduced diversity. It is as though the genome passed through a narrow funnel. What survived, carried forward. What didn't vanished forever. Some researchers trace one particularly brutal contraction to around 70,000 years ago, when a supervolcano erupted at Lake Toba in what is now Indonesia. The ash-blotted skies, cooled climates, disrupted ecosystems, crops and animals died. and with them, humans too. You weren't there, but your DNA remembers. Picture it, ash raining down, grey as snow, muffling the world in silence. Rivers clogged with soot, fish belly up, the smell acrid, sharp in the throat, clinging to skin. The tribe crouches in caves, eyes stinging, stomachs hollow. Nights stretch long and heavy, days grey and suffocating. The sun weak, the earth brittle. Many groups fail here, their lines cut forever. But a few endure, they huddle tighter, ration food, whisper stories by the fire. Somewhere in those whispers lies your inheritance. And so the bottleneck sharpens, whole lineages vanish, genetic variation shrinks like water in a drought. What passes through is precious. You are the descendant of survivors not only of predators and famine, but of near-global catastrophe. The odds that your DNA made it through that storm are absurdly slim. Yet here you are, listening. The bottleneck was not only disaster-driven, even before and after eruptions. Populations were small, isolation carved narrow branches, groups wandered far and lost contact. Children died young, mothers bled out in childbirth, infections swept through camps unchecked. At any moment, the fragile line of continuity could snap, and yet each time it held, barely, the bottleneck left its imprint like fingerprints pressed into clay. Every modern human shares startlingly similar DNA, far less diverse than many animal species. Cheetahs, for instance, carry deeper genetic variety than you do. That sameness is the echo of bottlenecks, of moments when survival teetered. You crouch by the fire now, staring at faces around you. Their eyes gleam with the same quiet fear you feel. Each knows how precarious life is, yet they laugh too, joke in low voices, nudge one another with familiar ease. Humor is a weapon against despair. Maybe that is why humanity endured, not only because DNA carried mutations, but because laughter carried resilience. Still, survival here is not gentle. A woman's child wheezes in the night, fever burning. Her tears leave tracks down cheeks, dusted with ash. By morning, the child is gone, wrapped in hide, buried shallow in frozen ground. The grave is marked with stones. A loss for her is a loss for all. Fewer numbers, narrower chances. The DNA that child carried will never echo forward. It is sobering, cruel, yet even in grief, life continues. By evening, the group moves onward, feet crunching frost, breath steaming into the pale sky. Your modern body stiffens at the thought of such thin odds. And yet in a strange way this fragility is what gave humanity strength. Bottlenecks pruned the genome, trimming away variation, forcing resilience into those who survived. Certain genes emerged dominant, ones for endurance, ones for adaptability. That pruning means you carry fewer differences from your neighbor than you might expect. Look around your world today. Skin tones, eye shapes, hair textures, superficially varied, yes, but genetically you are startlingly close. Humanity is a family bound by bottlenecks, by near-death experiences that forged a shared core. It is midnight now, the stars brutal in their brightness, wolves howl in the distance, their cries mournful. The tribe presses closer to the fire, a man coughs into his hands, the sound ragged. You imagine how every illness here ripples with stakes. One infection could carve a whole branch off the tree of life, and yet against odds, someone recovers, someone passes on immunity. The line holds, again and again. DNA remembers these close calls. Scientists studying ancient genomes can trace drops in diversity, sharp dips in numbers. It is like listening to a heartbeat falter and then steady again. Each falter is a reminder, humanity almost ended here. Each recovery is a testament, humanity endured. You walk with them across tundra, frost biting your feet, wind slapping your face. The horizon stretches endless and white. And still they move. Step by step, generation by generation they push forward. Behind them lie countless graves, ahead lies uncertainty, yet they carry on, and with them, your future carries on too. The bottleneck is not just a statistic, it is the ache in their stomachs, the cough in their throats, the child's shallow grave. It is every hardship that trimmed humanity to the bone, and yet it is also every spark of persistence, every shared meal, every laugh in the face of despair. The DNA you carry today is a survivor's DNA. It passed through fires, famines, and frozen nights. It slipped through bottlenecks where countless others did not. As the sun rises, pale and cold, you realize the greatest miracle is not that humanity thrived. It is that humanity survived at all, and survival here in the teeth of bottlenecks is why you are here to listen now. The wind off the steppe carries a chill that bites the inside of your nostrils. Each breath feels sharp, as though the air itself is flecked with tiny shards of ice. You huddle deeper into a hide slung across your shoulders, watching the small group ahead of you pick their way along the ridge. It is somewhere around 50,000 years ago, though no one counts the passing days in numbers. Hunger and cold are the only clocks. Yet beneath the hardships of the Ice Age world, something extraordinary is unfolding. Your DNA is knitting itself into a story of survival through adaptation. The bottleneck you walked through in the last chapter left humanity fragile, few in number, constantly at risk of vanishing. Homo sapiens nonetheless carried forward the most versatile toolkit evolution had yet produced, the ability to adapt. And here in this bitter land, adaptation is written, not only in tools and shelters, but in the very strands of DNA curling in every cell. Genes begin to favor those who can withstand the climate, digest new foods, fight new pathogens. Mutations, once random noise, become decisive. They do not just alter survival, they shape culture, appearance, even destiny. You kneel beside a woman scraping hides with a flake of stone, her hands quick and practiced. The smell of animal fat hangs heavy, mingling with smoke. Her children crouch nearby, gnawing roasted marrow from bones, their faces smudged with grease. You don't know it, but inside their blood a mutation is slowly becoming more common, one that alters the way skin produces melanin. In colder, dimmer latitudes, darker skin struggles to synthesize vitamin D. A tweak in pigmentation offers advantage. Lighter skin captures more of the weak sun, reducing rickets and brittle bones. Slowly, generation by generation, the code changes. Thousands of years later, you will see this difference in mirrors, a palette of human variation that is really a map of ancient sunlight. Nearby, a man drinks greedily from a skin of liquid. It isn't water, it is milk, warm and frothy from an animal newly domesticated. You nearly gag. Lactose tolerance is not yet common, and for most here, drinking milk means cramping, diarrhea, sometimes worse. But a few lucky ones carry a mutation allowing them to digest lactose past childhood. They gain calories, hydration and survival in lean seasons. Their children inherit the same edge. In time, this tiny tweak in DNA will spread across populations who herd cattle, sheep and goats, a legacy that echoes every time you pour milk into your coffee. Adaptations bloom not only in diet but in defense. Pathogens stalk this world as hungrily as lions. Malaria, though not yet the global scourge it will become, lurks in warm regions, spread by mosquitoes whining in the night. One day, a mutation in hemoglobin will offer resistance, shaping the sickle cell trait. Elsewhere, genes shift to protect against plague, influenza, smallpox. You sneeze into your sleeve today without thinking, but your immunity is an inheritance paid for by generations who bled, sweated, and died, so a stronger line could continue. Firelight flickers as evening falls. The air fills with the scent of roasting roots and singed hair. You watch as two hunters crouch near the flames, showing off fresh cuts. Their blood glistens, but it clots quickly. Behind this ordinary sight lies another adaptation. Genes for clotting, balanced against genes for bleeding. Too much clotting, and strokes loom. Too little, and wounds become fatal. Your DNA still carries these balances, precariously tuned by countless deaths along the way. There is a grim beauty in it. Every quirk of your genome, the way you metabolize sugar, the way your skin reacts to sun, the way your lungs draw breath at altitude, is the fossil of an ancient struggle. You are a museum of survival strategies etched in molecules. You complain about hay fever, but the genes that inflame your sinuses may once have been the very ones that kept your ancestors alive against parasites. You curse your sweet tooth, but the craving for sugar once meant instant energy in a world where every calorie mattered. You are both burdened and blessed by adaptations you did not choose. The tribe huddles closer to the fire as wolves howl in the distance. A child whimpers, clutching her mother's hide. The fire pops, sending sparks upward, tiny stars vanishing into the night. You notice her eyes large, wide, watching the dark. Some researchers argue genes even shape temperament, that fear of snakes, for instance, is written into the code. You wonder if her startle at every crack in the brush is part of the inheritance you carry whenever you flinch at a shadow today. Day by day, adaptation pushes humanity forward. Hunters refine stone points into longer, sharper blades. Gatherers learn which plants soothe the stomach and which kill. DNA quietly scribbles changes into the code. tweaks to enzymes, shifts in immunity, subtle alterations in skeletal growth. These changes accumulate invisibly until one day they become visible. Skin tones lightening in northern latitudes, body frames shortening in dense forests, eyes narrowing against the glare of snow. What you call race in the modern world is in reality the long story of adaptation painted across skin and bone. The group moves again, trudging across frozen ground, breath plumes white in the air, feet crunch snow. A boy slips, his laughter ringing strangely bright in the cold, his teeth flash, strong and even. But in some children, mutations weaken enamel, leading to decay. The survivors are those whose teeth endure the grind of roots and grit. Even your dental health today carries echoes of selective pressures. Night falls once more, and you dream in the flicker of firelight. Your dream feels crowded, faces upon faces, not only sapiens but Neanderthals, Denisovans, cousins, lost in time. Their DNA hums inside you like a chorus, each voice carrying adaptations won in pain. You wake with a start, heart pounding, and realize the truth. You are not a single story, you are a library, each gene a page written by survival. The camp stirs, another day begins. They will hunt, scrape hides, sing softly to restless children. They will laugh, fight, weep, and love. They will die too soon, and yet their code will continue. And through their code, you will one day sit under electric lights, sipping milk, scrolling glowing screens, marveling at how fragile and how stubborn humanity has always been. Every allergy, every quirk, every strength in your body tonight is proof. Adaptation is relentless. DNA is not merely survival, it is the memory of survival, and that memory began here, in the bitter winds of an ice age, with people huddled close to a fire, whispering stories while the world threatened to erase them. The steppe stretches flat before you, an endless expanse of frozen grasses glinting under the pale light of a sun that seems far too weak for the task of warming anything. Your breath escapes in clouds, quickly whipped away by the bitter wind. The horizon is grey, the ground hard, and yet the small group trudges onward. Every crunch of their feet is a note in a symphony of survival. You follow them, wrapped in the same biting air, aware that this journey is not only about endurance but about something much subtler, the quiet shaping of DNA through the spread of language, thought and symbolic memory. Tonight, you're walking into the mystery of the genes that made humans not just survivors but storytellers. A boy runs ahead, his laughter startling a flock of birds that burst upward with frantic wings. The sound makes the others laugh too, though their eyes remain alert. Laughter, odd isn't it? No other species does it quite like you, and though the sound is warm and fleeting, it's underwritten by biology. Somewhere inside these children are genes that allow not only the control of breath and vocal cords, but also the structuring of meaning. UXP2, the gene most often whispered about in modern labs, hums inside them, shaping their ability to sequence sounds and thoughts. At night when the fire burns low you hear it, not the grunts or hisses of earlier hominins, but something more complex. Words, not just sounds. A gesture, yes, but the gestures are paired with vocal patterns that carry meaning. It is not yet Shakespeare, not even close, but it is language, fragile and young. Their words carry across the circle like sparks, names for animals, warnings of predators, simple jokes that make shoulders shake. You realize this is not simply communication, it is collaboration. To hunt, to plan, to comfort, they must share minds. DNA has given them the tools and culture builds upon it. Think about it. A single mutation in FOX2 disrupts speech today, leaving people unable to sequence words. But here, with the gene fully functional, humanity steps into a new dimension. Words allow memory to be passed not only in DNA but in story. A warning about poisonous berries does not need to wait for a genetic adaptation to digestion. It can be spoken tonight, saving lives tomorrow. Knowledge leaps faster than biology ever could. The children hum softly, stringing sounds into patterns. Is it song? Perhaps. Song and speech sprout from the same soil. You lean back, watching the firelight flicker against their faces, and marvel. You are listening to the first drafts of lullabies, of chants, of stories told to ward off the dark, and all of it rests on genetic foundations carved into your cells. Morning comes with harsh clarity. The group scatters to gather roots, berries, whatever meager calories they can scrape from the land. As you follow, you notice something small but profound. They recognize patterns. A woman digs at the base of a bush, pulling out tubers, while a child watches carefully, then mimics the motion. The gesture is precise, almost ceremonial. Later the same child scratches symbols into the dirt with a stick, circles, lines, perhaps meaningless, or perhaps not. The brain is reshaping itself here, guided by genes for memory, sequencing, and abstraction. You think of your modern life writing words on screens, painting, composing music. All of it is built on these early sparks. Genes alone didn't create poetry, but they opened the doors of cognition, letting symbolic thought walk through. You feel a pang of awe, realizing the very act of you listening to this story now is part of that lineage. Without these sparks of cognition, there would be no curiosity, no history, no channel to lull you to sleep with quiet stories. The fire is brighter tonight. Sparks drift upward, joining stars that hang like pinpricks in the black sky. Around the flames, voices rise, not only in instruction or warning, but in rhythm. They are telling stories, rudimentary, fragmented, yet unmistakably stories. A man gestures wide, mimicking the leap of a great beast, while others laugh and nod. A woman hums low, her voice vibrating against the night, soothing the restless children. These aren't mere noises, they are performances, collective memories stitched into sound. DNA didn't invent culture, but it laid the groundwork. Genes for memory consolidation, genes for vocal flexibility, genes for emotional resonance. You realize with a start that even your ability to feel chills at music is not accidental. It is an inheritance, coded into you by ancestors who first sang by firelight while wolves prowled in the dark. There is a moment when silence falls. A child gazes into the flames, her lips moving slightly as though practicing words to herself. The flicker of intelligence in her eyes is unmistakable. This is the dawn of symbolic thought, the ability not only to perceive but to imagine, to think of things not present, to dream. You wonder if she is picturing tomorrow's hunt, or a predator lurking, or perhaps simply the comfort of sleep. Whatever it is more than instinct. It is imagination, and imagination is the most dangerous tool Homo sapiens will ever wield. The night deepens. Stars glitter like shards of ice. The fire pops, sending embers into the air. You close your eyes, and in the darkness behind your lids, you see it all: the rise of words, the shaping of song, the first stories. Your DNA is not merely a code of survival, it is a code of communication, of shared memory. You are carrying not only genes but the seeds of culture, waiting to bloom. By dawn the tribe moves again, following rivers, chasing herds. The children chatter, their voices high and bright. The adults trade words in low tones, making plans. You walk among them, feeling the hum of language in the air. Like an invisible current, it wraps around you, binding individuals into a tribe, tribes into a species. And from this hum, humanity will one day craft epics, scripts, lullabies, and everything you call civilization. You pause, hand against a cold tree trunk, and let the thought settle. Your ability to read, to write, to listen, even to drift into sleep. With this story, it all began here, with DNA shaping tongues and minds, with people huddled against the cold, whispering the first fragile words into the night. The dawn creeps pale and brittle across the horizon, its light spilling thinly over a landscape of frost and silence. You rise stiffly, brushing dirt and ash from your skin, and watch as the small group prepares to move again. Their breath fogs in the morning air, their movements quiet, deliberate. It's another day of survival, but hidden beneath their bones and blood is something remarkable. For in this age, roughly 40,000 to 50,000 years ago, their DNA is not only carrying the marks of adaptation, but also beginning to leave behind signatures of creativity. The world of tools, art, and invention is about to bloom, and every stroke of ochre or chipped stone is echoed in the double helix you carry today. The first clue lies in the tools. You kneel beside a man crouched over a piece of flint. His hands are calloused, steady, purposeful. With a careful strike he chips a blade so sharp it glints cruelly in the morning sun. This is no clumsy hammerstone. It is a carefully engineered point, long and thin, destined to be hafted to a spear. The air smells of flint dust, sharp and mineral, mixed with the musk of animal hides. Every strike echoes knowledge passed down, not through instinct alone, but through teaching, memory, and genetic predispositions for skill. You think about how awkward your own hands might be at this task today, yet inside you, in your neural wiring, is the inheritance of this precision. Genes related to fine motor control, to dexterity, to the planning parts of the brain. These are here because generations of ancestors shaped tools by firelight. The act of chipping stone was not only about making weapons, it was about refining minds. Later in the day, you follow the group into a shallow cave, its entrance dark against the hillside. Inside, the air is cool, damp, smelling of stone and lichen. On the walls, faint smears of red catch the flickering firelight. Ochre, a handprint, pressed flat, fingers spread. Beside it, lines scratched crudely, looping and jagged. They are not yet art as you know it, but they are symbols, marks of intention. You press your own hand over one, and the size matches eerily well. Across tens of thousands of years, you meet another human's palm. That hand, once warm, once moving, is now a fossil, only in pigment. Yet the DNA of the one who left it might be curled inside you even now. Art, however crude, is evidence of symbolic thought, and symbolic thought is tied to genetic wiring. Genes influencing the prefrontal cortex, memory, and abstraction push the brain beyond mere survival. With these tools, humans begin to imagine things not yet real, to tell stories not yet lived. You realize you are not only tracing the story of DNA but the birth of imagination itself. Outside the cave, the hunters return. On their shoulders hangs a deer, its blood dripping onto the ground in dark spots. The smell of iron and sweat fills the air. Children cheer, leaping to help, their voices high. As the carcass is skinned and roasted, you notice the tools again: bone needles, awls, scrapers, all crafted with care. Each one reflects not only necessity, but ingenuity. To make a bone needle requires foresight. Break the bone, shape it, pierce the eye. That foresight is genetic potential made real. Around the fire that night, the tribe eats in silence at first, hunger pressing down, but soon, the quiet breaks into murmurs, laughter, even song. A woman hums low, tapping rhythm against a log with a stick. Others join, their voices layering. It is hypnotic, this first music. The vibrations thrum in your chest, and again, DNA lies beneath it. Genes shaping vocal cords, auditory processing, memory for rhythm. Music is not a luxury here, it is cohesion, bonding, a way to soothe restless minds in the vast darkness. You lean back, staring at sparks rising into the night sky, and realize something. The archaeological record, scraps of tools, pigments, carvings, is not just about material culture, it is about the DNA that made such creativity possible. Without mutations that expanded neural plasticity, without wiring that favored imagination, none of this would exist. There would be no art, no music, no storytelling. There would only be survival in its barest form. The next day, you stumble across something stranger still, a figure carved crudely from ivory, small enough to fit in the palm. Its form is rough, but it is unmistakably human-shaped. Perhaps a charm, perhaps a talisman. Someone spent hours on this. Time stolen from hunting and gathering, time invested in meaning beyond immediate survival. Why carve unless your mind hungers for more than food? Why paint unless your DNA has wired you for symbolism, for memory, for beauty? You turn the carving over in your hand and feel its weight, heavy with intention. The tribe moves on, across grasslands, through forests, along rivers that glitter under thin sunlight. Everywhere they go, they leave behind traces, tools, pigments, symbols. Each trace is an echo, and each echo is carried still in your genes. The same hands that chip a flint or smear ochre are cousins to your own hands when they type words, paint, sculpt, or write music. At dusk, a storm rolls in. Lightning tears the sky, thunder booms across the valley. The group huddles in a hollow, rain pounding against hides. A child begins to cry, frightened by the noise. An elder leans close, murmuring softly. The words are soothing, rhythmic, almost like a lullaby. In that moment, you realize you are listening to one of the oldest human instincts: comfort, through story, through rhythm, through sound. DNA made this possible. Genes gave the capacity, culture shaped the habit, and you, thousands of years later, still crave the same thing: reassurance in the dark, a story to soften the night. When morning comes, the storm has washed the world clean. The grass glitters with droplets, the air smells of ozone and damp earth. The group rises, weary but alive. They carry their spears, their pigments, their carvings. They carry their laughter, their songs, their stories. But most of all, they carry their DNA, now infused not only with survival but with creativity. You realize as you walk with them that this is the turning point. Humanity is no longer just enduring. Humanity is expressing, and from expression will come everything: art, myth, religion, science, and yes, even this story you are listening to now. It all began here with a handful of people smearing ochre on stone, humming by firelight, carving ivory into shapes that meant something only to them. Their DNA gave them the tools, and they used them. And because they did, you exist. You are their descendant, their echo, their continuation. Every word you speak, every song you hum, every story you love, it is the same story they began, written first, not in books, but in genes. The morning air tastes metallic, heavy with the scent of dew settling over grasslands that stretch toward a far-off line of hills. You trudge along with the small band, your feet crunching on soil hardened by cycles of frost and thaw. Birds rise in sudden bursts, their wings flapping like ragged pages of a book you can't quite read, and yet in a sense you are reading, not the landscape but the invisible script encoded in the bodies of the people around you. For now the trail you follow is not only physical, it's archaeological. Tonight you will wander through the way DNA timelines cross-check against the stone tools, pigments, shelters and artifacts that litter the ancient ground. The tribe pauses by a shallow stream. The water is clear, cold enough to sting teeth when they drink. A woman kneels, washing the hide of an animal, the fibers slick with fat. She doesn't know it, but she is part of a chapter that will one day confuse scientists. Bones saying one thing, DNA whispering another. You crouch beside her, staring at the droplets clinging to the hide. Each one catches the sun, and you imagine time itself fractured in those reflections. The archaeological record shows us what was built, what was buried. The genetic record shows us who built and buried, and together they paint the portrait of us. Later, you walk through a clearing where scattered flakes of obsidian glitter like stars fallen to earth. This is a napping site, stone tools shaped and discarded in numbers too great to count. Archaeologists millennia later will find these flakes, puzzled by how such technology appeared suddenly in the record. The answer, lies in DNA, cognitive shifts wired into brains by genetic mutations in memory and planning. Those sharp edges are the fingerprints of a neural revolution. At dusk, the band finds shelter in a shallow cave. The air inside is cool, damp and smells of minerals and bat droppings. On the walls, ochre stains stretch in faint arcs. You raise a torch closer, squinting. Shapes emerge, hand stencils, smudges of animals, scratched lines. To an archaeologist, these are evidence. To you standing here, they are presents. Someone leaned close to this wall, pressed pigment with fingers, left behind proof of thought. DNA alone couldn't tell you that story. Archaeology fills in the gaps. Yet DNA provides the timeline, confirming that the artists were your kin, their genetic markers woven into your own. It strikes you as astonishing. Fossils are mute without DNA, and DNA is incomplete without fossils. A jawbone in Ethiopia dates to 95,000 years ago, showing features of sapiens. DNA extracted from later remains links those features to lineages alive today. The two records, the physical and the molecular, overlap like two halves of a broken pot, clicking together, and when they do, they reveal something profound. You are not only a descendant of bones, but of ideas. Around the fire, the tribe eats roasted tubers, their skins charred and smoky. The smell clings to your hands as you bite into one, the texture gritty but sweet. Archaeological remains of such tubers will one day puzzle researchers. Charcoal flecked with starch grains, evidence of cooking. But DNA tells you why cooking mattered. Genes linked to jaw size and digestion shifted over time. Fire softened food, reducing the need for massive jaws and stomachs. The archaeological evidence of hearths and burned stones pairs with DNA evidence of shrinking jaws and expanding brains. The records align. Cooking wasn't just convenience, it was evolution. You listen as an elder tells a story in halting words, gestures filling in what language cannot. Children lean closer, their faces glowing in firelight. Archaeology leaves no record of such stories. DNA cannot sequence a tale, but together, they imply it. Brains wired for memory, tools carved with care, pigments smeared with intention. Where artifacts exist, you see action. Where DNA exists, you see capacity. The union is the full picture. Humans as makers, as storytellers, as survivors. Days pass, you trek through forests, across rivers, over rocky ground. Each step uncovers traces, a campsite with bones cracked for marrow, a pit filled with ashes, a bead made from a pierced shell. Archaeologists will one day piece together such fragments and marvel at their spread. DNA, meanwhile, maps the people who left them, where they came from, how they mingled, when they split. The timelines don't always align perfectly. Sometimes bones suggest migration earlier than DNA does. Sometimes DNA reveals hidden lineages, archaeology missed. The truth is slippery, a dialogue between stone and code. Night again, the fire smolders. You lie awake, staring at the ceiling of the cave. The smoke curls upward, staining rock black. You think about how archaeologists will one day scrape those layers, reading the soot as history. You think about how geneticists will one day read your saliva the same way. Both are stories etched in different mediums, rock and blood. Together they confirm one thing: humanity has always left traces, even when it tried not to. In the quiet, you hear a child murmuring in sleep, her small hand curled near her face. Somewhere in her cells lies DNA that will match bones yet to be buried, artifacts yet to be found. You realize she is both future fossil and future genome, both records, living and waiting. And she is proof that archaeology and DNA are not separate at all. They are simply different ways of listening to the same song. The band rises at dawn, packs up, and moves on. Behind them they leave a scatter of flakes, a smear of pigment, a layer of ash. Ahead of them they carry DNA, humming silently in every cell. Between what they leave and what they carry lies the whole mystery of origins. One day, long after they are gone, the two records will meet in labs and trenches, telling a story too vast for either alone, and in that story you will find yourself. The wind whistles through a canyon, a low moan that makes the hairs on your neck rise. Shadows stretch across the rocky ground, long and jagged, while the sun burns a pale disk in the icy sky. You walk with a small band of sapiens who have wandered far from their ancestral hearths, their footprints pressing into soil that few of their kind have ever touched. It is around 40,000 years ago, and though they don't know it, their DNA is about to branch into new shapes, molded by separation, by drift, by isolation. Tonight, you're stepping into the slow but inevitable process of regional diversity, the way humanity fractured into many colors, many faces, many lineages, and yet remained one species. The tribe pauses near a cliff where caves yaw open. The smell of damp stone and guano drifts from the darkness. They settle here, unrolling hides, lighting fire, roasting tubers dug earlier in the day. The smoke curls upward, stinging your eyes, and you feel the comfort of warmth against the evening chill. You look around the circle of faces. They are recognizably human, but already subtle differences creep in. Narrower noses here, broader jaws there, variations small but persistent. In time these differences will deepen, carved by DNA reshaped through isolation. Genetic drift, scientists call it. A small group splits off from the larger population, cut away by geography, rivers, mountains, oceans. Their DNA begins to drift in its own direction, not because of great advantage, but simply because of randomness. Mutations spread or vanish in these smaller pools, and soon the descendants look and feel subtly different from their cousins, far away. One valley births almond-shaped eyes, another shores up curly hair, another lightens or darkens skin. None of it happens overnight. It is slow, imperceptible, like sand shifting under waves. The evidence lingers in you, in your skin, in your eyes, in the curl or straightness of your hair. The diversity you see in the modern world is not recent invention. It is the long story of isolation and reconnection. Walk into any city today and you see the echoes, the wide spectrum of humanity painted in skin tones and bone shapes, all crafted not by separate origins, but by shared DNA drifting in separate pockets. You sit with the tribe as they eat. The taste of roasted meat fills your mouth, smoky and rich. One child giggles, her teeth small and bright, while another sulks, refusing to chew bitter greens. Personalities diverge as much as appearances. Some are cautious, others bold, and even these tendencies may root partly in genes. But culture overlays the biology. Songs, rituals, laughter, genes and environment weaving tighter and tighter. Morning, the group splits temporarily, one party following game, another staying near the cave. Weeks pass like this, each group now carrying slightly different DNA. When they reunite, marriages exchange genetic code, knitting together but also introducing fresh combinations. Imagine this happening not once, but millions of times across thousands of years. Rivers crossed, mountains climbed, oceans breached, and with each split and reunion, diversity blooms. The archaeological record hints at it: distinct tool styles, different pigments, varying decorations. One group favors blade points, another carves bone into needles, another drills beads from shells, and the DNA record confirms regional differences etched into genomes. Africans carrying deepest diversity, Europeans showing Neanderthal traces, Oceanians holding Denisovan, whispers, a patchwork of lineages, stitched together in one species. You walk further through forests heavy with pine, the air sharp with resin. In the undergrowth, you notice berries, dark and glistening. A woman tests them cautiously, spitting them out when bitterness burns her tongue. Knowledge of plants becomes local, passed through story. DNA doesn't record which berries to avoid, but it records the neural capacity for memory, for teaching, and the more isolated a group becomes, the more specialized its knowledge. At night, children huddle as elders mark symbols on cave walls. Spirals, dots, handprints. Perhaps meaningless, perhaps maps, or counts, or charms. Each region develops its own visual dialect, and in time these differences, cultural, physical, genetic, become distinct identities. Yet when tested, the DNA still reveals kinship. Every human alive remains a branch from the same root. The differences are surface, the unity foundational. You pause to reflect. In the modern world, people often mistake diversity for division, race for separation. But here, walking among these early bands, you see clearly, diversity is the inevitable outcome of small groups drifting apart, of bottlenecks and migrations. It is survival written in variation, and it is all still one species, one story. The fire burns lower now, sparks rise, fading quickly into the dark. The faces around you glow amber, each one distinct, wide cheekbones, narrow jaws, broad foreheads, small eyes. Each one carries DNA that will echo down thousands of generations, shaping how humans look across continents. You realize you are staring at the prototypes of everyone you know, everyone alive today. As dawn breaks, the tribe moves again, their footprints scattered across the frost. Some will wander north, others east, others back toward the south. Each path will carve the genome differently, leaving behind signatures of migration and isolation. And when scientists one day unravel those signatures, they will find the same truth you see now. Diversity is not division. It is the legacy of survival, of resilience, of DNA painting humanity in many colors, but always with the same brush. The night is still, so still that even the fire crackles too loudly, each snap of resin echoing against the rock walls of the shallow cave. You sit cross-legged near the flames, watching sparks leap upward like fleeting souls only to vanish into blackness. The band around you murmurs softly, some sharpening tools, others dozing with heads pillowed on hides. The air smells of smoke, damp stone, and the faint musk of the deer hide stretched nearby. This evening feels ordinary, but hidden inside it is the seed of something astonishing, the revelations that future scientists will uncover when they finally rid the DNA of ancient bones. For tonight you step into the world of ghost lineages and unexpected discoveries, where the genetic story of humanity takes bizarre, humbling turns. It begins with bones no one thought mattered, a tooth, yellowed and cracked, found deep in Siberia's Denisova cave, barely anything at all small enough to fit between your thumb and forefinger. Archaeologists at first treat it as a fragment, a leftover scrap of a child who lived tens of thousands of years ago, but when geneticists later grind the enamel and coax out fragile threads of DNA, the results stun them. This child was neither fully Neanderthal nor Sapiens. She was Denisova, an entire branch of humanity, unknown until that very moment, hidden in plain sight. You imagine her now, curled beside a fire in the Altai Mountains, her breath clouding in the frigid air. She hums softly to herself, fingers tracing lines in the dust. She has no idea her tooth will one day rewrite human history. She has no idea that her DNA will tell modern scientists that entire populations once roamed Asia, leaving whispers in your blood. The ghosts were always there, you just needed the right tools to hear them. But the story grows stranger. Another fragment, a sliver of long bone, no larger than a matchstick, is analyzed. The genome extracted from it reveals something impossible. This individual was the direct offspring of a Neanderthal mother and a Denisovan father, two different human species, meeting in a cave, raising a child together. The realization shakes your sense of boundaries. Species, once thought to be neat categories, collapse into blurred families. The child herself, long gone, still lives inside you in the fragments of DNA passed forward. Ghost populations appear everywhere once you start listening. Geneticists find traces of mystery ancestors in the genomes of modern Africans, lineages that split from Homo sapiens hundreds of thousands of years ago. but somehow mingled back in. Their bones have never been found. They exist only in the echoes of nucleotides, shadows flickering in your cells. Imagine carrying the DNA of people who left no fossil record, no handprints, no tools, invisible kin who vanished yet still walk beside you every day. The tribe you travel with cannot know any of this. They squat by firelight, gnawing marrow from cracked bones, tossing scraps to the fire. Their world is immediate, physical, warmth, hunger, predators, shelter, yet in their very bodies they carry the ghosts. Neanderthal fragments, Denisovan whispers, ancient African signatures. Every laugh, every breath, every child born is a chorus of species, singing together, whether they realize it or not. You think about how strange it is that modern science needed microscopes, centrifuges, sequencers to hear what was always humming. A genome is just a fossil too small for the eye, but vast enough to hold multitudes. In your body you are not one person, not even one lineage. You are a palimpsest, written and rewritten by hands you will never see. The fire burns lower. A man stares into the embers, silent, lost in thought. Perhaps he wonders about the stars above, or about tomorrow's hunt. He doesn't know that he carries Neanderthal blood. He doesn't know that in 2025, someone will map genomes and find Denisovan signatures scattered like footprints in Polynesia. He doesn't know that ghost ancestors whisper in Africa, unseen yet undeniable, but he lives them, every second. Morning comes grey and cold. You step out of the cave, your feet crunching frost. The horizon is wide, the land empty, yet you know it is not empty at all. It is filled with cousins, relatives, ghosts. Some you will meet, trade with, laugh with, maybe fight with. Others will vanish without ever being seen, leaving only genetic fingerprints behind. As the band moves forward, you realize the true mystery of DNA isn't only about origins, it is about absences, about lives that left no bones, no tools, no art, only a few silent letters in your code, and yet those absences shape you just as powerfully as the visible ancestors. You walk on, chilled by wind, warmed by fire, haunted by the realization that inside your body walk ghosts who never knew your name, who never imagined you, yet without whom you could not exist. Their silence is your voice, their extinction is your survival, their absence is your presence. The sky presses low and heavy with winter clouds, a slate-gray dome stretching over the tundra. The air is sharp, with cold, carrying the scent of snow and distant pine resin. You walk, with the tribe across a barren field, their bodies hunched against the wind, their hides stiff with frost. Ahead, reindeer move in slow herds, scraping at the frozen ground for patches of lichen. Spears glint faintly in the pale light. It is survival as usual, yet beneath this ordinary scene hums an extraordinary truth. These people are both like you and not like you. Their DNA is close, achingly close, but not identical. Tonight you trace the subtle comparisons between Homo sapiens and their vanished cousins, Neanderthals, Denisovans, even earlier hominins, and discover just how thin the line between them and us really is. You crouch by the fire that evening as hunters return, dragging carcasses streaked with blood. The smell of iron fur and smoke fills the camp. Faces glow in firelight, high foreheads, rounded skulls, small chins. These are sapiens traits, distinct from the heavy brows and projecting faces of Neanderthals. Yet if you blurred your vision, the differences would shrink. Both species make tools, tend fires, love, grieve, laugh. Both carry DNA so similar that interbreeding produced fertile children. Less than 1% separates their genomes, yet history chose sapiens as the survivors. Why? The comparisons are subtle but telling. Neanderthals were stockier, built for cold climates. Their rib cages flared wide, their bones thick with muscle attachment. Sapiens were lankier, better suited for endurance running, for traveling long distances in harsh sun. One was brute strength, the other persistence. Both strategies worked, until one proved slightly more versatile. DNA hints at the difference. Sapiens carried more variation in certain brain-regulating genes, especially those tied to memory and symbolic thought. Not better, just wired differently. You imagine standing in a cave where both once lived. The walls flicker with torchlight. On one side, a Neanderthal chips stone, his hands steady, his tool sharp. On the other, a sapiens paints ochre onto rock, outlining animals that stampede across the surface in ghostly herds. One builds weapons, the other symbols. Both are survival strategies. The cave is humanity's fork in the road. Denisovans complicate the picture further. They were tall, broad, mysterious. Their fossils are scarce, their faces unknown. Yet DNA shows they carried unique adaptations, genes for thriving at high altitudes, for resisting diseases in Asia. Imagine meeting one on a cold mountainside, wide nose, strong jaw, deep eyes. You'd recognize kinship immediately, even as you sensed difference, and if you shared a fire, perhaps you would share more than warmth. You pause, staring at the stars above. It strikes you how thin the boundary of species really was. These were not alien beings but cousins. They loved, mourned, and sang. Their DNA is inside you. 1–2% Neanderthal, up to 6% Denisovan in some populations. You carry them in your blood. Every time you breathe on a mountain, every time your skin responds to sunlight, every time your immune system fends off infection, you are leaning on their legacy. But not all inheritances were gifts. Some Neanderthal genes increase risk for diabetes, depression, even nicotine addiction. Imagine that. The moodiness you feel on a rainy day may trace back to a Neanderthal huddled in a damp cave, struggling with the same glue. Denisovan legacies too carry burdens, quirks in metabolism, vulnerabilities to allergies. The line between advantage and curse is fine, sometimes invisible, until tested by environment.
Around the fire the tribe murmurs in low tones.
A child cries, soothed by soft humming. You realize the sounds echo through thousands of years, the same comfort offered by Neanderthal mothers, Denisovan fathers. Love is not species-specific, it is human in the broadest sense. Morning breaks, pale and icy. You walk with the tribe through snow-dusted valleys. In your mind comparisons blur. Homo sapiens, creative, restless, migratory. Neanderthals, strong, deliberate, enduring. Denisovans, adaptive, mysterious, resilient. The truth is not superiority but chance. Slight differences in DNA nudged sapiens toward symbolic thought, toward larger social networks, toward stories and myths that bound groups together. That edge, fragile, almost imperceptible, shifted history. And yet, the survivors are not pure. Sapiens are mosaics, their genomes patched with Neanderthal and Denisovan fragments. You are not Homo sapiens alone. You are hybrid, layered, complicated. Every heartbeat carries the rhythm of cousins, long vanished. Every breath exhales a lineage larger than us versus them. As dusk falls again, the tribe gathers in a cave for shelter. Torches hiss, shadows leap. On the walls are both tool marks and painted lines. Strength and imagination, muscle and symbol, joined together. You touch the stone and feel it vibrate with memory. The comparisons fade. There was never a sharp border. There was only humanity, many faces, one story. The dawn is muffled, the kind of pale, heavy light that slips reluctantly across a sky swollen with clouds. A hush blankets the steppe. You stir beside the dying embers of the fire, rubbing smoke from your eyes, and notice the band already gathering their tools. Spears lean against rocks, hides are tied into bundles, children are hoisted onto hips. Another migration begins. Another day in the endless rhythm of movement. But tonight's story isn't only about walking through rivers or hunting reindeer. It is about how the invisible code inside their blood is rewriting the way the entire species understands itself. DNA, once an unknown substance locked away in cells, will one day unravel human origin theories, reshaping myths, and challenging what it means to be us. You walk with them across the frozen plain, the ground crunching beneath your feet. For them the movement is instinct. Follow food, follow water, avoid predators. For you, modern eyes trace something larger. Every step is not only physical but theoretical. Because of DNA, we now know they aren't just marching forward, they are spreading, splitting, weaving together, carrying fragments of cousins inside them, and that truth has rewritten history, more profoundly than any cave painting or stone tool. For centuries, scholars debated the origins of humanity. Some argued for separate beginnings. Europeans, Asians, Africans, emerging independently in their regions. Others argued for a single origin, a cradle in Africa from which all humanity spread. Bones alone gave conflicting whispers. Skulls found in Asia, in Europe, in Africa, each told part of the story but not all. Theories clashed like spears. Was there one Eve or many? Was there one Adam or countless? Then came DNA. It was like handing humanity a time machine, hidden inside its own flesh. Suddenly we could compare genomes across continents, across species, across millennia, and the results were staggering. Nearly all modern humans trace back to Africa, around 50,000 to 200,000 years ago. Fossils had hinted at it, but DNA confirmed it. The out of Africa model became undeniable. Those who walked the Rift Valley plains are the ancestors of everyone alive today. Yet DNA also complicated the story. It showed interbreeding where no one expected it. Instead of clean replacement, Sapien sweeping aside Neanderthals and Denisovans, it revealed mixing, hybrids, children of blended lineages. You are not a pure descendant of one group, you are a mosaic. The human family tree is less a tree and more a tangled river delta, braiding, splitting, rejoining. You imagine a scholar in the 19th century, insisting on rigid racial categories, claiming purity where none existed, how DNA would laugh at him. Every race is artificial, a snapshot of superficial traits shaped by environment. Underneath, the genome whispers, you are all kin, mixed and remixed for tens of thousands of years. The band pauses at a river, its water sluggish with ice. They cross carefully, clutching children, balancing hides. One man slips, curses, hauls himself up dripping. Laughter breaks tension. Simple moments like this shaped lineages as much as great migrations. Who survived crossings, who didn't, it all etched itself into DNA, and when scientists read those etchings, they rewrite theories once carved in stone. At night, huddled by the fire, you think about myths. Long ago people told stories of separate creations, gods fashioning humans from clay in one land, from bone in another, stories of chosen peoples, of distinct beginnings. Beautiful, but wrong. DNA burned those myths down and built a new one, stranger but more profound. You are one species, one family. The divisions you cling to, skin, language, nation, are thin veils over a shared origin. Even stranger, DNA revealed that humanity nearly vanished multiple times. Bottlenecks, plagues, eruptions. Theories once imagined a smooth rise of sapiens, but the code shows otherwise. You are the survivors of near disasters. History is not triumphant ascent, but fragile persistence. Every breath you take tonight is a rebellion against extinction. The evidence sits even in your own body. Look at your reflection, the curl of your hair, the shade of your skin, the tilt of your eyes. Once thought to prove separate beginnings, these are now understood as adaptive variations, the genome's paintbrush responding to latitude and climate. All humans share 99.9% of DNA. The differences, once used to divide, are only surface echoes of ancient migrations. You lean closer to the fire. Sparks warming your cheeks. Imagine the scientists in sterile labs. Thousands of years later, pipetting samples, sequencing genomes. They will peer into saliva and bone dust, uncovering truths these people could never dream of, and yet the result will not separate us further. It will collapse walls, revealing how thin the lines of division really are. The tribe sleeps. Children curl into mothers, hunters sprawl near spears. The fire sputters low. You lie awake staring at the ceiling of the cave, smoke staining stone black. You think about the strange irony. DNA, the ultimate personal code, has made individuality feel less unique. You are not separate. You are part of a continuum stretching back unbroken to Africa. The genome is humbling, reminding you that the story is not yours alone. It belongs to everyone. Dawn comes pale, breath visible in the air. The group stirs, shakes off sleep, prepares to walk again. Their minds are fixed on food, shelter, warmth. They don't know that their cells are writing the story of humanity. They don't know that thousands of years later, their descendants will argue in universities, read sequences under microscopes, and marvel at the complexity of their origins. But you know, and that knowledge is both grounding and dizzying. You walk with them, one step after another, realizing that the biggest revolution in understanding humanity didn't come from fire or flint or pigments. It came from reading what was already inside. DNA, the script written before any story was told, and that script rewrote everything. The night is calm, almost eerily so. A faint wind drifts over the valley, carrying the smell of cold earth, wood smoke, and the sharp tang of fat sizzling over a low fire. You sit close to the warmth, watching faces glow orange in the flicker. These people, their bones, their laughter, their DNA, are the last chapter of this long journey you've walked through. They don't know it, of course. They think only of keeping the children warm, of driving spears into game tomorrow, of watching the shadows for the gleam of predator eyes. But you, sitting here with them, know more. You know that their DNA is not only survival but legacy, a gift still unfolding tens of thousands of years later. Tonight is the wind down, the soft fade into quiet, where we gather the echoes of everything carried from 50,000 BCE to the present. You breathe deeply, the smoke biting the back of your throat. Above, the stars sprawl without limit, each one bright enough to hurt. The silence between them feels infinite, but inside that silence, you feel connection. Not only to these people huddled near the flames, but to everyone who came after. The Neanderthals, whose brows furrowed in caves. The Denisovans, whose strength filled the mountains. The ghost ancestors, who left no bones, only whispers in your genome. All of them are here, in the marrow of the hunters laughing across from you, in the eyes of the child yawning against her mother's shoulder, in the shape of your own body as you sit in the glow. The fire pops, sparks twisting upward. You follow them with your gaze, thinking of how DNA is like those sparks, tiny, fragile, glowing briefly, but carried upward, onward. Each birth is a spark, each survival through famine, eruption, winter is a spark. So many fizzled into darkness, but enough endured to light the path all the way to you. You realize how slim the odds truly were, how many bottlenecks nearly erased the story, how many ghosts you carry, how many traits, lactose tolerance, skin pigmentation, immune defenses were written in pain and persistence. Your eyelids droop, heavy with the rhythm of their voices. The group hums softly, a low song pulsing like a heartbeat. It has no words you recognize, but the cadence is familiar, soothing, repetitive, safe. The first lullabies of humanity, woven from DNA and memory. You let the sound wrap around you, imagining how many millions of times since then parents have sung the same comfort to restless children. It is the most human thing to soothe with sound,